couple days behind, and we did discuss it on the pod, but I am going to talk about it here. Frank Bolton, no longer the CEO of the Atlantic League, no longer the chairman of the Atlantic League, and we're going to have to talk about this because it is a major shift in the landscape here, and I'm sure I'm going to go over some of the points that we mentioned on the pod. So if you've already listened to that, get ready for some repeat. If you haven't, do listen to it, linked at the end of the video, but let's get into it here. So, Frank leaving, obviously he's gotten up there in age a little bit, he's 75, not the end of the line by any stretch, but definitely we're teeing off on the last few holes. So I'm not overly surprised that he no longer wants to have all the formal titles and formal responsibilities that go along with the position. That part makes sense. It's also how do I phrase this? It's also a landscape that's changing quicker than it has in the past too. You have the threat of banana ball now. You have the private equity infusion. We've seen that with Lancaster. Maybe related, maybe not related. I don't know. You have new groups coming in and out like we haven't seen since really about 15, 20 years now. You have just a lot going on here, and it does feel like new leadership is a good thing for the Atlantic League at this point. However, we've talked about it before, where if you look back to the periods where indie ball was its strongest, right? That mid-90s to early aughts period, and then I would even say your mid-teens to right after the pandemic or so, you had these leagues really led by central figures. You look at the Frontier League, it was Bill Lee's league to run. No one was questioning that. He was the guy in charge there. You look pretty much across the board. You had Miles Wolff, we'll call him American Association for the sake of argument, but he was Northern League. He was, just about everything, had a hand at everything at least. So he was a guiding light there. And then you had guys like Frank Bolton in the Atlantic League that were guiding the ship there. And it was their vision and their vision that worked. And nowadays you look across the board and it's not really the case anymore. You have, Josh Schaub in the American Association. Ball Colts is also there, but it's Schaub's league to run, if we're being honest with ourselves here. Atlantic was still Bolton up to now, but it definitely felt like, there was more than met the eye. And then in the Frontier, sure, you have Tasler, that's the guy, and then obviously Shep does a lot of work as well, and they're good at what they do, but there's not one guy at the top here. In that league, you have, 16 different voices, 18 different voices, all saying, hey, I want a piece of the pie here, I want to have a say, and that's a herding cat situation there. So, and then the Pioneer League is its own situation here. We talk about them enough and seldom ever in a good light, so I don't want to continue to slaughter a beat dog. But what works in this is having that one singular vision. Again, to reference Banana Ball, it's Jesse Cole's vision. That's what works. You need a bunch of other people and a bunch of other people that are buying in and that are confident in their jobs to make the vision work. But you need one guy that has that authority to make it work. And sure, it is a high risk, high reward proposition. If that vision is flawed, then it all goes to hell very quickly. But if the vision isn't flawed and it is executed well, then you get a quality product, you get a good product. And that is why I'm starting to think, is Bolton leaving a positive here just to get some new blood in here, get a refresh of the league, get some of the new vision of it in? Now, it's going to be Bill Shipley, the head of York, taking over here. It was a unanimous vote, which kind of tells me that, Frank kind of tabbed him to be the guy and everybody fell in line here, and Frank's still involved in the league, so let's not pretend like his presence in the room is not going to affect the way things are done or the way business is done or the way teams or people are treated. It certainly will be, but it definitely changes the dynamic a good bit in how the league is ran here. And I'm curious to see what comes next year. Are we going to see more of this private equity infusion like we've seen with Lancaster? Are we going to see teams come in or out? Are we going to see expansion come in or out? We've seen various rumors around that recently. Obviously, we've have Frederick that was in, then they were out, and now they're definitely out. But that franchise still exists. It just kind of lingers, though. And then now you also have a bunch of teams that, should we get another round of realignment between affiliated and unaffiliated, is Long Island more or less likely to jump to be a Met franchise now? Is Hagerstown going to look to be poached by a Baltimore or a Washington or a Philadelphia or something like that? That's certainly a question mark there. You have two nice stadiums in North Carolina as well that, quite frankly, make a lot of sense if you are a Braves team, or if they decide to add a team in North Carolina, say Charlotte or Raleigh. High Point Stadium and Gastonia Stadium both would work nicely as either a single A or double A park. That's certainly something you can't rule out. And York and Lancaster both exist in Phillies territory, and it wouldn't be out of the question for a Pirates affiliate to pop to there either. So you go through each and every point of it, and you're left with only a couple of teams where you're like, oh yeah, they're probably safe. And those teams are really Southern Maryland, whose stadium is in the middle of nowhere and just got new ownership as well. And then you have Staten Island, whose ballpark was cut earlier. So it's not exactly. Oh, and there's Lexington and Charleston, who both were also cut earlier as well. So you have the cut teams, a team in the middle of nowhere, and everyone else has a conceivable pathway to being affiliated if they want it. So it is going to be kind of wild to see what comes next. Obviously, the hope here is that they have a unifying vision, that they're going to modernize. It looks like their streaming is going to be on home team, so maybe we're going to get some uniform branding across all the teams for as far as broadcast will go and broadcasting standards. That'd be very nice. Get maybe a brand refresh, a bigger push into the technology space to help fight off, all these banana ball poaching attempts here, and really try to coalesce the talent into one league. That could be something that we're going to see here. But regardless, it is definitely going to be a big change to not just the Atlantic League, but to indie ball as a whole. So we will see how it goes here, and we'll see what the future looks like in 26 and beyond for the Atlantic League. And we'll discuss some more on the pod, like I mentioned at the start of the video. The link for that should be on the screen shortly if it's not already there. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any more. But until next time, don't forget to play ball.